Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. I just finished the finale of Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 8, The Jedi, The Witch, and the Warlord. Right off the bat, I know I'm extremely hyped about this episode right now, but as it stands, this is probably my favorite episode of Disney Star Wars that we've gotten, and in my opinion, is definitely the best episode of Ahsoka Season 1. There are massive amounts of Star Wars lore and developments to break down in this episode, but as always, this is going to be more of a first reaction, and we're going to talk about the big things and the stuff that I noticed. And later in the week, we'll be giving more an in-depth analysis on the episode itself in terms of what Baylan is up to, Anakin, and way more. I really appreciated that this episode very much felt like the finale to a film. From the production, to the acting, to the way that the whole thing crescendoed and all the arcs concluded, this episode especially felt like a full-length Star Wars movie. It also did a lot to develop characters that took the backseat for a lot of the series, mainly Morgan Elsbeth, as a lot of her motivation was delivered to us in subtle references throughout the episode, and I really found myself surprisingly feeling bad for her, empathizing with what the Night Sisters of Dathomir went through, and empathizing with other characters of the past such as Ventress, characters who truly found a home among the Night Sisters, and when that was ripped away, the impact that it had on them. The writing here with Morgan was exceptional, especially in the beginning when she's imbued with the gift of shadow. It almost felt as if somebody was achieving the rank of a Jedi Knight or a Jedi Master, although of course completely flipped and dark side in nature. Still though, I very much felt for Morgan, and I thought that her fight scenes in this episode were far better than the fight scenes that we got with her in the second season of The Mandalorian. I found it tragic that of course this villain is now a representative of the last witches of Dathomir, even taking upon herself the blade of Mother Talzin, which is again in many ways Morgan's own mother, and her ascension to being gifted the gift of shadows, echoed in her literal voice, was a sweet and a twisted moment for me. And now finally, we also got a force-imbued weapon that will go up against lightsabers, something that I think will be very important in the first Jedi film, as I don't think that they will have developed lightsabers. And it's still cool that they brought a lot of the Legends lore into Ahsoka, with this just being the very beginning. Moving on, I also thought it was a beautiful touch that Ezra inherited the emitter shroud of Kanan Jarrus, or at least the replacement that Hu Yang had. I also thought his interactions with Hu Yang were very interesting, as well as comedic, and although their scene was very brief together, I hope that we get more in a second season and in the Dave Filoni film. I also liked the idea that Kanan would select a blue kyber crystal as we previously theorized. In Rebels, after Ezra's lightsaber was destroyed by Vader, we never really learned why he had a green crystal, and it wasn't ever explained. In the first season of Rebels, Ezra actually imbued upon a clear kyber crystal and it turned blue, and I certainly feel like blue is more Ezra's color as a representative as a Jedi Guardian. In this brand new era of Jedi, Ezra absolutely represents a Jedi Guardian at their best, someone that cares about his friends so much. Moving on though, Hu Yang talking about Ahsoka being fearful of Sabine was also really important, and harkened back to the book of Boba Fett and her interactions with Luke, as well as why she would be so afraid to train someone like Grogu, someone far more powerful in the Force than Sabine. But with this final episode of Ahsoka, this arc for Ahsoka has come to a close, as she tells Sabine that she will not leave her and that she will stick by her just as Anakin did to her, a clear reference to the Clone Wars. When the entire Jedi Council and Jedi Order were calling Ahsoka a murderer, Anakin was literally the only one, even among the clone troopers, that stood by his apprentice. And now, Ahsoka has learned that lesson, and learned to take the best aspects of Anakin and apply it to her own student in Sabine, a sentiment that is echoed later in the episode when Sabine decides to stay with Ahsoka, proving that they both have learned from that generational line and the mistakes of the past, the mistakes of Anakin, and even the mistakes of Ahsoka. And at this point, this over a decade-long arc with Ahsoka Tano, at least this part, finally comes to a beautiful conclusion. Ahsoka promising that she would never leave Sabine really got me a little bit emotional, to be honest, as it means so much about the characters of Anakin, Ahsoka, and now the brand new apprentice. Moving on, let's talk about Grand Admiral Thrawn himself, and how he still truly believes that the Empire is the best thing for the fate of the galaxy, something that is echoed a lot in the Thrawn books as well as in Legends continuity, and I think that they've done an exceptional job with Thrawn, what little we've seen of him this season. He really does view himself as a liberator of the galaxy and the Empire as the rightful ruling force, and the thing that makes him most interesting is he also has a point, especially as now we've seen the corruption of the New Republic. Thrawn is not like the previous leaders of the Empire and Palpatine and Vader. He actually has major problems with how they govern the galaxy. The fact that Thrawn has a point makes him even more dangerous than Vader and Sidious in some regard. Next up, the Night Troopers are in fact undead stormtroopers, or at least they were about to be with the spells from the Mothers. A lot of the men are zealously loyal to Grand Admiral Thrawn. They realize that as they march into battle, they will die. Again, this is something else that is echoed in Legends. Inspiring this fanatical loyalty is something that Thrawn has done before, and we get the confirmation that many of these men are in fact the stormtroopers that were originally on the Chimera, but that again the Mothers eventually manipulated and twisted into undead troopers. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, I also thought the choreography between Morgan Elsbeth and Ahsoka was far better than it was in The Mandalorian, and to get to see Morgan make a final stand, even stating "for Dathomir," was heart-touching in a twisted and extremely dark way. Just like many of the other troopers laid down their lives, so too did Morgan Elsbeth. And I was a little disappointed that she was eventually killed by Ahsoka, but I'm not 100% sure that she's gone forever. Speaking of the undead, let's talk about the Death Trooper Night Troopers. I actually chuckled to myself when the Death Trooper Night Trooper appeared, as I've joked before that Star Wars was forced to call these new troopers Night Troopers because Death and Shadow Trooper were already taken. So to see a Death Trooper be reanimated into a undead corpse that was still extremely proficient in combat was a terrifying and exciting thing to behold, especially since this is a callback to many of the Legends novels featuring undead zombie stormtroopers. Getting part of the Death Trooper's mask knocked away and showing of course the corpse within was an eerie callback to many of the Legends novels, as well as the iconic imagery. This again goes to something that I've truly loved about Ahsoka, that it very much honors a lot of Legends and finds new and interesting ways to bring it into canon, taking inspiration from some of the best parts in Legends and reworking it in an intelligent and in sometimes heartfelt ways. I'm also glad that the threats that they've established in this first season are going to be overarching threats, especially the likes of Baylan. But before we get into what he's up to, I want to talk about the final interaction between Thrawn and Ahsoka. The final and first. Thrawn's last words to Ahsoka set up a beautiful rivalry between the two of them, one that is just the beginning. And I have a feeling that their interactions in the future are going to be some of the most compelling parts of the next season, as well as Dave Filoni's film. Thrawn is a very different enemy than Ahsoka has ever faced. And with that, Thrawn has a great history with Anakin as well as Darth Vader, as he reveals his true feelings about both of them to Ahsoka. At first, he commends her. He realizes that she will not be bargained with, and that she is an extremely proficient and dangerous fighter, something that Thrawn is especially wary of after losing to Ezra. He will never underestimate a Force wielder again, especially not one trained by Anakin. The fact that he calls her a Jedi Ronin, a guardian, and a wandering warrior is also extremely compelling. But Thrawn also questions Ahsoka's place in the galaxy, putting a lot of the blame that Vader wrought throughout the stars and all the terrible things that he did, again, firmly on Ahsoka's shoulders. Something that Ahsoka learned to overcome this season, but something that clearly Thrawn and even Baylan blame her for. These brand new Star Wars characters and villains especially that we've been introduced to is some of my favorite parts of the entire lore. I absolutely love Darth Sidious, but he was comically evil. And not to mention, he's been the villain in 9 films, so now to get a brand new type of villain that very much view themselves as the heroes and liberators is the best thing about this Dave Filoni universe that they've now established. Baylan views himself as a hero, and Thrawn views himself as a hero as well, with the New Republic, Ahsoka, and the Jedi all being the villains. Seeing how the New Republic has operated through The Mandalorian and now through Ahsoka, the plight of Thrawn and Baylan is very clear. And again, unfortunately, they have a point. The Jedi are dangerous. The New Republic is imperfect, and they seek to right it, as everyone is the hero in their own story. But going back to Ahsoka being confirmed to be a Jedi Ronin, I still very much believe that she's also a representative of the light side of the Force in Mortis, with this even being hit home even further with Moray, the representative of the daughter, appearing in the finale of the episode, as well as the fact that among the statues that Baylan is standing in front of, that the daughter is missing. but I also believe there's even more symbolism to this that we'll get into in a moment. Ahsoka's journey, though, will ultimately end as Dave Filoni has described as a Gandalf-like character, a wandering warrior of the light, and I do hope that Ahsoka's story is concluded one day with her going off in the galaxy again as this Ronin. I'm also going to be referring to this as a brand new class of Jedi, adding the Guardian, the Consular, and the Ronin, with our current representatives of these three Jedi groups in the galaxy right now being Ezra as the Guardian, Ahsoka as the Ronin, and Luke Skywalker as the Consular. But now, let's talk about by far the most intriguing part of the episode, Baylan, the Ones, and the far-off beacon that calls to him. As I mentioned, the statue of the daughter is missing, and I believe that this is representative of the very path that Baylan is on. In videos a few days ago, I coined the term false balance, which I believe Baylan is an agent of. This is shown to us visually as Baylan is standing on the hand of the Father himself, the representative of balance within the Force. However, although a statue of the daughter is missing, the statue of the son is very prominent, indicating that whatever calls to Baylan truly does not represent a balance in the Force, but leans to the dark side. It also speaks to a deep connection that the Ones have to the world of Peridea. We know that the Night Sisters before actually worshipped the Ones of Mortis. However, uniquely, the Father was not mentioned in their worship, only the daughter and the son. But it's clear now that something extremely powerful calls to Baylan's skull, something that perhaps the Ones originally fled when they abandoned Peridea and went to Mortis, some origin of the dark side, or at least an extremely powerful dark side threat. And again, I truly believe that what is calling to Baylan is the Queen of the Stars in Abeloth. And I do believe that Abeloth will be the massive overarching threat following Palpatine and Thrawn, a brand new Force entity that will threaten the very structure of the galaxy and even the Force itself, potentially even a great enemy to Anakin Skywalker, the representative of balance right now. As in Legends, even the power of all three of the Ones was never enough to destroy Abeloth, only to contain her. And now, following the death of the Ones, I believe that Abeloth has been calling to Baylan to free her. The Night Sisters have fled Peridea. It is revealed that they have been long dormant, and I do believe that they have been forced to leave the very galaxy itself that represents death. Even the Purrgil go there to die. Thrawn and the Night Sisters blame Peridea for being a place of horrors and death, of madness and dreams. And the thing that I absolutely appreciate this is going to be an overarching threat for several years to come. This felt like the conclusion to a first film, not the conclusion to an entire series. Dave Filoni is setting up a massive threat in the known galaxy, but I believe an even greater one in the unknown. A world literally shrouded by death, being led by a warrior of false balance who seeks to free a power that he does not understand. In the end though, my friends, I give this episode a 10 out of 10. It was everything that I've wanted an Ahsoka series to be, and I cannot wait for the future of Star Wars moving forward with Skeleton Crew, The Acolyte, and especially Ahsoka Season 2 and Dave Filoni's movie. This is what a great Star Wars installment feels like. This is how it felt at the end of A New Hope. That the story arcs and stories of these characters have been tied in a beautiful, neat bow, but also a larger threat still looms, one that our heroes do not fully comprehend. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on Ahsoka? Are you pleased with what we got in the finale? And what aspects are you most intrigued for the future? Thank you so much for going on this almost 2-month journey with me. May the Force be with you, and I truly hope that you guys had a great night.